Welcome to RPG Book Club, the podcast where we play a little bit of a video game and talk about how it makes us feel. I am Sam Allman.
I'm Bernard.
And I'm Trish.
And today we will be playing the first part of Trish's auto-RPG, Super Lesbian Animal RPG, stopping at the Luna right after we defeat the Core Guardian. But before we get started, how is everyone's week?
Oh, fucking okay.
Same.
Right.
I had like a 3-day span of every day having at least a good 4 to 5 hours of horrible mental health crises in a row. So that sucked. It seems to be better now. I'm going to take a wild guess it was because I was having some issues with my prescriptions, namely due to having issues getting them refilled. I had to go without them several days, and then even after getting them, went without them for went without at least one dose for several days because I just kept forgetting to take them, and that's not great for brain chemistry. It could just be, my brain's a mess. I don't know. But yeah, there was that. Right now, my wife is out of town, and I miss her. She's gone to Pennsylvania for the weekend. But yeah, no, I'm mostly just trying to stay on top of things, trying to make the most of my time before I have to find a job. How are you doing, Bernard? Besides, okay.
Oh, I've been so tired for a very long time. I've been so tired and so much fatigue and lethargy, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it. If anyone knows if there is just some supplement I need to take in order to be able to do things, let me know.
I relate to that. I've been sleeping way too much and not doing very much.
I am currently adjusting to Wellbutrin being in my system, so I am productive.
See, I tried that and it didn't work for me. I'm glad it's working for you, though.
Yeah. I think next month when my doctor asks me how it's going, I will ask for the 300 instead of the 150 that I'm on now because I can tell it's helping, but I could use a little more. And so that'll be great. But specifically, my week has sucked. My Monday through Thursday was pretty good. Or my Monday through Thursday morning was pretty good. My Thursday through Friday night was so bad it tanked the whole rest of the week. So moving was super expensive because we didn't get our deposit back, and even if we did, it would only be $200, and our new deposit was $1,500. So we had to charge a lot of like rent and groceries and stuff for the month of July on credit cards that we had just completely paid off, which sucked. And so to make ends meet, we're like on ramen and macaroni for the month, and that's been fine. Summer is a fantastic cook, so she can take like tuna mac and it'd be the best fucking thing we've ever had. But Thursday I drop Summer off at her boyfriend's and then take the kids to the grocery store and get a couple of groceries because the kids wanted pizza and we needed toilet paper. So I get the groceries and I look and I'm like, the roof of the parking garage, that door is right around the corner from my apartment. The right in front of we have a private walk-up door. Right in front of our private walk-up is being constructed, so I can't park there. So the other parking that I have available is around the corner and up a ways, which I'm not going to carry groceries and a 3-year-old that far. So I will park real quick without a permit on the roof of the parking garage to take the kids and the groceries in, and then when they're in bed, come and move my car. So about 2 hours later, I come out and my car is gone because it's been towed. They were like waiting for me or something, and it sucked a lot. And Wisconsin, quote unquote, thankfully, quote unquote, has limits that quote unquote towing companies can do, so it doesn't get quote unquote expensive. But it is capped at $150, which sounds good, except it's $150 plus $30 per day of storage fees, plus up to $150 of amorphous service costs. And they, of course, charged the whole thing. So I had to pay $350 to get my car because they will tow all day. Their towing hours are 24/7. Their pickup hours are over at 2 p.m. So that more than likely you cannot pick up the car the day that they tow it. So you get that automatic next day $30 added onto it, $150 charge and $150 service charge, and it sucks, and I fucking hate it so goddamn much. So yeah, things sucked really fucking bad on Thursday and Friday. But since then I've played some Dragon Quest 7 and I've played some Super Lesbian Animal RPG and played some Tales of Fantasia, and things are much better. But I will attempt to make $350 appear out of nowhere.
I'm glad those things helped. That's awful. That is such a horrible, scummy practice, and I wish it was a surprise that any business in America did a horrible, scummy practice, but that's still a pretty bad one.
Yeah. Though while I was there, my partner's husband was the one that was giving me a ride, and he is very much the like, if you're going to be shitty to me, I'm going to be shitty back to you in a smart way on principle sort of thing. And their entire business is emblazoned with giant copyright infringing pictures of superheroes. So he took pictures of all of them. We're going to forward it to DC to get them to get them at the very least a cease and desist, but make their life slight hell because they made ours a lot of hell. So yeah, it sucked. But you know what doesn't suck? Super Lesbian Animal RPG. So
I'm glad to hear you think that.
So let's listen to some of this kick-ass music and then we'll get started.
Super Lesbian Animal RPG was made by Bobby Schroeder, aka Ponent Plus or just Ponent online, with the music done by Beatrix. Ponent was also known for her Tumblr blog Thanks Ken Penders, which is all about the Sonic the Hedgehog Archie's comics. I have not checked out this blog myself, but I know people who read it and enjoy it. The game began life back in 2013 as a fan game based on My Little Pony Friendship is Magic called Super Lesbian Horse RPG. That fan game, as I said, came out in late of 2013. It was just a short RPG Maker game that, aside from using the characters of My Little Pony, was set in its own extremely bizarre setting with no real connection to the show otherwise. That made it fairly easy for Ponent to then turn that fan game into a wholly original work, retooling the ponies into various anthropomorphic animals, giving the world more depth and breadth, and greatly expanding upon the content of the game. While still being made in RPG Maker VX Ace, the game boasts a fairly customized set of combat mechanics, as well as an absolutely incredible soundtrack. A demo came out for it in early 2018 and the finished game was finally released at the end of 2022. Despite the success of the game, Ponent has no plans for porting the game to consoles due to the issues RPG Maker has with doing so. And that's my background.
Cool. I wondered why, when I went to backlogged to enter this game into my playing list, why when I typed in Super Lesbian, there was a Super Lesbian horse RPG from 2013.
Mm-hmm. I actually, fun fact, I played that game way back in the day. It was fun, it was good, but yeah, the transformation from that into the full Super Lesbian Animal RPG game is wild and just improves on it in basically every way. There's very little, honestly, of the original game here, but what is there is still great, and I'm very happy to see it made it in because it was very funny and good in the original game. Now that we're done with the background, getting into what we played in this first recording session. The game begins with a story of how the goddess Fortuna gifted mortals with magic. This act changed the course of history, allowing plagues to be cured and society to flourish. By present day, the abundance of magic is an accepted reality, sitting alongside modern technology. Still, there are some people who choose to become adventurers, seeking fame and glory and moderate financial stability. That done, we start with a prologue. Melody and Allison, an anthropomorphic pink fox and yellow bunny, respectively, are walking through a forest at night, there to solve a scavenger hunt pushed under Allison's door. The two are dating and have recently decided to become adventurers, joining their friends Claire and Jody in a guild. It soon becomes clear that the one who gave them the map, who is also hidden nearby yelling at the couple to get a move on, is Claire, a mage and a cowgirl. Not in a Wild West sense, but in the sense that she is an anthropomorphic cow. She brought them out that night to perform a magical ritual, but before she explained further, a behemoth boar shows up and attacks. It quickly becomes clear enough in that first combat of the game that neither Allison nor Melody are particularly good at fighting. They can barely hurt the boar, and the monster takes out a huge chunk of their health with each attack. Before you can lose the hopeless fight, Claire joins and hits the creature with a scorch spell, sending it running away. As that battle demonstrated, part of the problem with becoming adventurers so far has been that Melody and Allison are in their early 20s with no experience in it, so they kind of suck, especially compared to those people who've been working on it since they were young. Claire finds that unfair and so has prepared this ritual, one apparently from the goddess Fortuna herself, meant to awaken a person's magical potential. The ritual comes with questions, however, such as why they have chosen this path. Allison wants to be an adventurer because it feels right, it's in her blood. But Melody, well, her girlfriend wanted to do it, and she doesn't want to be away from her for too long or worry about her, so she decided to do it alongside her. After all, she doesn't have any other life goals or things happening otherwise. Melody wants to heal, but not as a cleric. Instead, she asks to become a paladin. As the magic powers up, Melody asks if this is dangerous, to which Claire clarifies that yes, it absolutely will be. Once the ritual begins, Melody finds her consciousness has moved to some astral void, and she follows a path made of colorful stars, as Claire works to sort out the one last part to this her awakening. Allison's ritual went off fairly easily, since she's not aiming to be anything more than a bruiser. Along the way, just off the path, Melody spies a shadowy figure watching her. Claire has no idea what that's about and tries to make it seem like it's nothing to worry over as the figure walks away.
I immediately forgot about this.
I did too until just right now.
Well, to be fair, I don't even know if you have to look at it. I'm not sure if that was optional or not.
I looked at it.
Yeah, I
And
looked
You
I
did?
forgot about it.
Well, we'll have to see if that comes back later in the game. At the end of the path, Melody is forced to decide what kind of paladin she wants to be. After all, paladins get their abilities through faith, so Melody has to pick something to base those powers on, something she believes in. You could choose here whether you want to be a woodlands paladin, focusing your faith on nature, an amorous paladin, focusing your faith on Melody's love for Allison, or a resolute paladin, focusing her faith on herself, believing that she's the kind of person who should be a paladin. What did everybody pick?
I picked Nature Paladin because I like the idea of nature. You put me out there, I don't know what to do, and I end up miserable, but I like the idea of it.
I feel like that says I think how I would imagine Melody feels about nature as well.
I picked Amorous Paladin because I read it as the concept of love, and then every single person after scolded me or like, you shouldn't base it on your love for Allison. You should do something else. I'm like, oh, above all things I believe in love. I didn't realize above all things I believe in my girlfriend is going to be my my paladin anathema. So
My first playthrough of the game, because obviously this is my second time playing through. My first time I played Amorous Paladin, it is a thing where as an Amorous Paladin you can base your love on anything. Later in this segment, someone talks about there being an Amorous Paladin who bases her love on its a love for her community and her people.
Mm-hmm.
But when Melody chooses it, she's very specific in like, I'm basing it on my love for my girlfriend, which they've been together like 2 months. That's a lot of strain to put on a relationship.
Yeah. They have been best friends since like middle school, but they've only been Facebook official for about 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. They went from being it was friends to lovers, the slowest speed run ever.
Yes.
And I went with Resolute Paladin, which I think should be an interesting way to take things because, yeah, it is this fun idea of she believes that she is the kind of person who should be a paladin, so that belief in herself gives her paladin powers. Though, as they point out, that is both a positive and a negative feedback cycle in that, her powers working emboldens her faith and makes her powers stronger. But if she ever doubts herself, her powers will get weaker, and the same feedback cycle could screw her over. So I look forward to seeing how that goes.
We all picked a different thing. I can't believe it.
I can't either.
If only there was like a logistics conversation before we started that said that there's 3 paths to this game and we should see what the differences are. That would probably make sense to do.
Well, with whatever kind of paladin you choose to be decided, the ritual is complete and we begin Act 1, set several weeks later. Having spent that time skip practicing her new healing magic, Melody is psyching herself up for heading to town to go and see Allison, ready to start being an adventurer. She's impressed with the outfit she managed to put together, which is fair because it is extremely cute on her. We also learn a little bit more about Melody, namely she's trans, bisexual, and only recently started dating Allison a few months ago. They'd been lifelong best friends. It was only recently that each realized that they were crushing on the other. You can look around her house before heading out, and there's a lot of fun things to find, but that's for memorable moments. For now, let's go onwards to Greenridge. Blocking the path right away, there is a humble hermit, a cute little crab monster, but it'll be easy to fight that after the ritual and all of Melody's training. There are also a few chests scattered around the woods and the beach on the way to town, as well as other monsters you can fight for the gold and EXP. Once she arrives at Greenridge, Melody comments on how it's a nice and peaceful town, or at least she thinks so. She's never lived anywhere else. Also, there was that time Claire caused a wailing curse that made the town extremely loud, but it's usually quiet at least 4 days a week. There's a lot to find exploring the town, such as a retired Dark Lord, a librarian who's irate with Claire for very valid reasons, and the tower where the Paladin Brigade is headquartered. You can also meet the 4th member of the Adventurers Guild, a buff tiger girl named Jody, who's sitting on a bench, just straight up chillin'. Her girlfriend is Faith, the unicorn in charge of protecting the town. But none of that's necessarily plot important or required. What you do have to do is head outside the town to the west, past the construction area to a hiking trail. There are more monsters around, as well as a treasure map and associated treasure to find, but eventually you will find Allison hanging out at the north end of the park, watching the horizon. She has a scratch, which Melody heals to show off her ability to do healing magic, as well as giving us a better idea of what that entails in terms of, her experience as a character. It even has little special CGs and everything. Allison is very excited to see Melody, who has been absent for several weeks, but before they can talk much, a whole hound attacks. Allison's unique battle mechanic as a punk is that her starting super moves, which run on star power, which is a separate mechanic from MP, are directional. She has one attack for each direction between right, left, up, and down, with different enemies being vulnerable or resistant to different directions, and their sprites as a hint to tell you where they're vulnerable to be hit. Also, star power is a mechanic that is itself kind of neat in that each of the party members gains star power in different ways based on the kinds of characters they are.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
These hints you mentioned, are they obvious or am I...
Oh no, they're not always obvious. Sometimes they're difficult. Like the
Okay,
whole
because
hound...
I couldn't figure out which way I should hit anyone.
The whole hound, for example, one of its eyes is glowing, so you hit it in the direction of the glowing eye. Other than that, I don't remember a lot of them off the top of my head. And also, once she learns Dive Bomb, which takes just one little more gauge of the spirit power, or the star power, that one's just better because it always hits and it doesn't do more damage based on a direction.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the way with our first two party members at least, Spirit Power works or Star Power. I keep calling it Spirit Power because we were just Skies of Arcadia. So Melody, if you heal people, she develop that builds Star Power for her, and Allison develops Star Power from hitting people. Also, both of them have a move to kiss the other one, which boosts their stats and gives them Star Power because they're girlfriends and they can just do that. And the save file keeps track of how many kisses there have been. Also, fun thing with the settings is if you go into settings, you can find that among the actual things you can toggle, there's things like ludonarrative dissonance and art, which you can move around and don't do anything.
I was wondering if the ludonarrative dissonance and politics and art
Politics,
options did anything. And so I looked it up and they don't, and it's very funny that they don't do anything. I guess the difference for me is if I were making this game, my idea of what would be funniest would be to make them incredibly deep mechanics. And the game would never get finished because I'd be balancing it forever.
Oh, gosh. Well, once the whole hound is trounced, they decide to do a date. Unsure what to really do on a date, they smooch in a very funny MS Paint style animation before deciding to head back to town. On the way, they run into Paula, a coworker of Allison's, who is a massive jerk. You can talk to her, which will lead to her sniping at Allison and mocking her for even trying to become an adventurer. Beverly, the pig girl who runs the local diner, will immediately talk to Melody and Allison once they enter town, offering them a couple free slices of chocolate cake, even though the restaurant is closed. They head inside and eat the free food, and Allison asks why Melody just kind of disappeared for a few weeks. When Melody explains that it was because she was studying the material on magic Claire had given her, Allison points out that she could have studied in town and she didn't have to hole up in her house. Melody clarifies that she felt a pressure on her to really get at least one spell down before showing her face in town again, that otherwise it wouldn't look like she was taking things seriously. Allison tries to assure her that there was no pressure like that on her from anyone, and you have a choice as to whether Melody opens up to her on how she's feeling in more detail or to change the subject. I chose for her to be honest about how she's feeling, since it's a good idea in a relationship to be honest and communicate.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to know.
Of course, we as the players would also like to know.
Yeah, I'm a gossipy bitch. Like, yes, it's healthy, whatever, but I was there for the goss.
Allison's right. Everyone is being supportive, but Melody is unsure if that support is genuine or if people are just being nice because they're her friends. Plus, that support is itself pressure. If they believe in her, they're expecting her to try and succeed. Worse, it's not like she wants the opposite. She doesn't want them to tell her that she's going to fail at this. Anxiety is complicated and often creates contradictory emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Melody then tries to do that thing that I do that all my partners hate, where immediately after opening up about her anxieties, she downplays them by saying she's overthinking things and asking Allison to ignore her. Apologies to my collection of girlfriends for having to put up with this behavior. Switching topics, Allison reveals some big news. She quit her job. That way, she can focus on adventuring full time. She's happy to finally get out of that minimum wage job and hopes that the guild work will pay more long term. You can have Melody congratulate her or ask if that's really a good idea, of which I did the former.
I played Fire Emblem Three Houses like 3 times through, so I have been trained to tell people what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. So, yeah, I congratulated her.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the idea of being like, is that really a good idea? But like, I don't know, just my own personal experience. If I do something like, I'm going to quit my job so I could do this thing I've always wanted to do, I'm not going to be like, oh, are you sure? That's really a horrible thing to say to your partner.
And besides, she already quit her job. She put in her 2 weeks notice 2 weeks ago. So what's doubting her gonna do?
Yeah. They bring up at this point that they should probably look into what Claire is doing. And once done at the diner, they find Jody, who says she was poking around Allison's basement, working on a project. The two head into said basement, only to find Claire is not only there, she has turned Allison's basement into a dungeon using magic. Allison is not happy about this arcane remodeling, especially because she's just renting the place, but Claire downplays any damage this tampering could have. That is when we get the title card, Claire dooms the planet.
And a little chiptune song that I believe is the Always Sunny in Philadelphia song plays.
I wouldn't know because I haven't seen that show.
This is I've never watched an episode of that show, but this is a reference to it.
Yes.
Okay.
A running gag on the show will be like I believe one famous example is someone says, how's anyone gonna get hurt? And then it cuts to the title card where it says so and so set so and so on fire is the title of the episode.
Oh well, thank you for explaining this reference. I now understand it better.
Yeah.
By her logic, this simple dungeon she's made will be great training for both of the newbies, and she even joins them to go through it. Of course, they're on a date, so Claire is being a bit of a third wheel. To accentuate this, before heading into the dungeon, Allison and Melody talk about all the kissing they'll do in front of her, using escalating euphemisms to annoy her. It is wonderful.
I don't remember what the final one was, but I don't even understand it.
Oh, I think
there was something about submarines, and I was like, what?
Submarine watching.
Watching submarine races, which I don't know what that is either. This is
I thought real hard about it, trying to figure out what it means.
According to Urban Dictionary, watching submarine races is a euphemism for making out and more in a car. It's the kind of thing a cop would say to be funny when he knocks on the window. I still don't understand what I guess in a car.
We cannot hope to understand how cop humor works.
And I don't want to. Well, this magically created dungeon is made of cardboard, and the enemies are all dust bunnies. If you set the dust bunnies on fire, they become flaming dust bunnies, which are much stronger. You need 2 keys to get to the final room of the dungeon, but when you examine the locked door to find that out, Allison complains there's no lore to this dungeon. Annoyed, Claire quickly cobbles together something about how evil these dust bunnies are and that they've stolen something of hers that's locked behind the door.
Oh man, I didn't investigate the door, so I didn't get this dialogue.
Yeah.
I just saw that it
good.
said you need 2 keys or something like that, so I just went on.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. There's also a secret in this dungeon. There are 2 different points where the back walls of the room give away if examined, revealing a cave behind the dungeon. You can poke around in there to find a generator, which is apparently powering the dungeon. Allison seems annoyed that Claire would, I think the lights of the dungeon, not the dungeon itself. Allison seems annoyed that Claire would use a generator in a small sealed space like this, but Claire clarifies that it's an arcane generator, it doesn't use fossil fuels. Plus, she put it next to water, just in case. Speaking of water, there's a mermaid in there, and she attacks as an optional mini-boss. After the fight, it turns out it was just a big misunderstanding, and you can turn off the generator, which reduces the accuracy for the dust bunnies in the dungeon. If you're wondering why it only reduces their accuracy and not yours, it is explained that dust bunnies have very bad eyesight. Once they get the keys, you can go and fight the big dust bunny, which initially just seems to be on top of a big cardboard box, but after taking some damage, will reveal itself to be a big and buff and wearing a wrestling title belt dust bunny. Once you take it down, you get a zircon saber it was guarding. Allison is genuinely touched by this present, and Claire mentions that while it was once a powerful enchanted sword, someone switched that gemstone out on the hilt, so now it's regular. As they go to leave the room, they find that they can't. The door is gone. This is strange and scary, and made worse by the fact that they can't burn a hole in the wall because Claire made the entire dungeon fireproof in a rare moment of actually thinking ahead to ward off consequences. We then cut away to Jody, who is wondering where her friends are, before suddenly getting a text from Faith telling her to get her equipment and see her. It's urgent, but not to tell anyone. Luckily, our party finds a new exit on a different wall. Heading there will take them to a cave system. At first, they're confused about how and where they are, but heading further in, Allison recognizes their surroundings and gets even further confused. They're on the west side of town now, opposite the direction they've been going. The reason Allison knows this turns out to be because she came down here to hide a family album full of pictures of her, which she put down there to get a fresh start when she became an adult. Against her protest, the party all looks the pictures together, and much fun is had by all, except Allison. They keep progressing through the tunnel until, well, they find it transitions into a void space that looks kind of like the dungeon Claire made, but all glitchy. This glitch dungeon is full of glitch monsters, including the terrifying Most of an Egg. And it also has absolutely killer background music. You need to find 4 keys to unlock the way forward, and this time there's a lot of secrets. Some of the chests with the keys are protected by a glitchy barrier, so you need to find a computer where a mysterious person with the initial V left instructions on a spell to purify the corruption that comes with these places, which Melody learns. Once you nab all the keys, you can head to the core, where the core guardian appears to defend the place. This boss has a sword and shield mode, varying up its stats and the tactics as the fight progresses, but eventually you take it down, leading to the appearance of a man with a videotape for a head.
With all these glitches, you'd expect it to have a Scarlet and Violet mode, not a Sword and Shield mode.
Oh! The videotape guy is Javis, not Jarvis. He stresses this, and he is quite annoyed at the intruders who have broken into the facility and attacked his creatures. After a bit of back and forth, he reveals that this place was set up under the town in order to prepare for his superior's arrival. And then he realizes that the core that was sustaining this dungeon was damaged in the fight, leading to the entire thing ceasing to exist. This puts the party back in the actual cave system Allison remembered, and from there they're able to leave and head back to town. Claire tells the others not to share with anyone what just happened, at least not yet, while Allison and Melody are ready to get some rest after an unexpected ordeal. What exactly has Claire done to doom the planet? Why did Faith reach out to Jody? Who is Javis' superior? And most of all, will Allison and Melody continue to be cute and gay? We'll have to find out next time.
Yeah, let's listen to some music from this game, and then we'll talk about our memorable moments.
I want to go last so I can just fill in whatever you two don't cover, because I have a lot of memorable moments because I love this game.
There is a lot of really good writing in this game. This game is one of those games where sort of the gimmick is just that there's going to be a lot of writing in it and it's going to be really good. One thing I really enjoyed is you can go to the headquarters of the Paladin Brigade, which is like this giant chapel that's like as big as 3 or 4 other buildings in the town. And inside you can talk to a paladin who looks very paladin-esque, huge armor and holding a huge sword, which is like buried in the ground. The tip is buried in the ground, and you talk to this paladin and they're like, look, since you're joining the Paladin Brigade, I'm gonna level with you. I got my sword stuck in the floor here, and now I'm just trying to play it cool, and I can't move because then everyone will know. And Melody's like, I could help you get it out. And they're like, no, then everyone will know. I have to wait until everyone leaves. And then Melody's like, I'm not actually joining the Paladin Brigade. I'm going to be a freelance paladin. And they're like, oh my God, forget everything you just heard.
Yeah, she's absolutely great. I do love that aside from Faith, who's the leader of the Paladin Brigade, the rest of the entire group are all different kinds of dogs.
Mm-hmm. If I had to pick an animal to be a paladin, it would probably be a dog.
Definitely.
I think just the phrase pangolin paladin is pretty good, though.
Oh, well, that's true.
That's pretty good.
Pangolins do have armor.
It's true. Now we need to make a sequel to Rocket Knight adventure called Pangolin Paladin.
Yes.
So the writing in this game is fantastic, and I have several writing related memorable moments. But having cut my game design teeth in RPG Maker, I love seeing all of the seams of how this was an RPG Maker game, and it's super cool. Like the gimmick of this battle system is actually not a gimmick; it's a rebranding of something that RPG Maker does, where you have each person has 3 resources. They have HP, MP, and TP, and the idea is in RPG Maker you pick, a fighter's not going to have any MP, so they're going to use TP, but this one uses all 3 of them, but it obfuscates the TP to be a star meter, and so when you have your star meter full, and they do a lot of really cool things that I know that I know behind the curtain because I've been behind the curtain before, and there's so many cool little ones like that. Like I don't remember what the actual settings are, but there's 2 settings that they're not using in the settings menu, so they have labeled them politics and ludonarrative dissonance, and you can freely change the slider however far you want on both of them, which I thought was hilarious. I haven't played or haven't messed around in MX in a while, so I don't remember what goes there, but it's definitely not politics and ludonarrative dissonance. But
this is actually, I think, made in VX Ace, is
okay.
the exact version of RPG Maker it's using. I've also played around with RPG Maker a little bit, but more than that, I've played a lot of RPG Maker games. And yeah, seeing what was done with the engine for this is just so fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, it's funny, going immediately, we were just playing Skies of Arcadia, going from that to this, to another thing that uses both MP and an SP abbreviated resource. But also one that's still very different. Star Power is very character based, with each different party member having a different way to gain star power.
Yeah, and there's there was one of them where there's a tent that they put on layer 1 instead of on layer 2, so you just walk over it. And there were quite a few little things like that. The biggest RPG Maker seam that I see in the game is the gamepad support sucks. Apparently the community has a top rated one that's really good. I made my own, but
you were talking about how, you just changed this to this and you changed this to this, and I'm like, we're both on Steam Deck. I just pressed 2 buttons to download the community layout, and it works great.
Yeah, I spent a good 10-15 minutes rebinding and making everything feel exactly the way I wanted it to, and I probably could have just gotten the community thing.
Yeah, the tent joke with it being on layer 1 is like, that's from the original Super Lesbian Horse RPG fan game. It was in that as well. And I enjoy it because it's not just you can just walk over this tent, you can examine it, and the characters are like, who put a tent on the ground?
Yeah, when I started playing this game, it turns out there is some sort of weird thing when you're playing on a Steam Deck. Sam told me how to fix it, but I haven't tried yet. Where when people are talking, it slows down, and I was just like, maybe that's just this is a small game. This is an RPG Maker game. Maybe it just is lacking a bit of polish. But then when I started walking over the tent, I was like, I don't think it would be lacking this much polish. But then I did examine it and was like, that's a weird joke.
It's such a weird joke. It's also on the FAQ where someone, like, this is a frequently asked question on the website where someone's like, why wasn't there collision detection on the tent? And it just says, you should try examining it.
So silly. So some of the writing things that I loved is there is a very Mother 3, well, these snails are having a picnic, so we can't go this way. We'll better find another way around.
I love it so. I love silly as hell like blocks on where you can go like that. Like just well, we can't interrupt these snails, and they're not even anthropomorphic snails. They're just
No,
normal
regular
snails.
snails. So another writing thing I love is when Claire is revealing that it's a dungeon. She goes, "I didn't just take over your basement. I created drumroll," and then she hits a button, and the lights behind her say a dungeon. She didn't say, "Oh, I created you a drumroll dungeon." She put a dungeon in the lights, which is about 900% funnier.
It
Yes.
is.
Very precision strike of funny there.
Yes.
Also, when she says in her dialogue, a dungeon, it's rainbow and wavy.
Mm-hmm.
And making something rainbow and wavy selectively is something that I find very funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the funniest thing, I don't know if this is the case, but I think the funniest thing would be to do it exactly once in the entire game and to have it be here. I don't know if that's what they're doing here. Because I haven't played the rest of the game. But the game does seem to have a lot of just, we're going to do something silly and bespoke for one joke, and it's going to be great. Like
It does.
cutting to an Always Sunny in Philadelphia title card, or doing the MS Paint CG where they just like smash together and then you hear applause.
I love that joke so much. Yeah, no. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say another joke that I only got while we were talking about it earlier is if you go and explore the town, if you go to the west side of town, there's a well there that there are danger signs everywhere. And if you try to examine the sign, it just says danger and you can't go in. That's the well where Allison hid the book. So therefore, Allison probably put up the signs to keep everyone from going and finding the photo album, which is just fantastic. And as you get more people in your party, if you examine the things, every party member then says danger when you read those signs.
There's a second thing like that, which is there is if you backtrack to Melody's house and examine the toilet in her house, every single party member you have up to that point will go toilet in sequence. It's so good. Yeah, so there's just so many fun writing things with this game, and I'm probably going to go over some more soon. But I love this style. I've been told that this is a very Earthbound style, where it's very goofy and fun and silly comedy, but mixed in with like really heartfelt and relatable and real emotions. And I just adore that combo, even though I feel weird being a host on RPG Maker on RPG Book Club saying this, but I've never been able to get very far in Earthbound because I just don't click with it very well, and yet it inspired all of these games that I adore.
I mean, the thing about Earthbound is that it's very hard at the beginning.
I haven't gotten very far in it either.
Oh my god!
I know. I've been expecting.
I feel better now.
You casuals.
So in my defense, it was one of the games that we were maybe going to do for a sellout game like in year one, and so I was like, okay, I'll just wait and do it then. And then we ended up not picking that game, and then the rest of RPG Book Club happened. I didn't have a lot of free time.
There aren't that many good sellout games that we can do, so we'll get there eventually.
Absolutely.
One day.
Like, trying to think of games that are popular enough to do as sellout games, I actually found sort of difficult. And we've already hit some of the big ones. And of course, it's not so hard if it was like, oh, we're going to do Final Fantasy 6 and Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 8 and Final Fantasy 9 and Final Fantasy 10, but that's a little boring, and already have done 2 Final Fantasies on this podcast. Plus the entire 13 trilogy on a bonus thing.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of RPG Maker games and the Earthbound adjacent and feelings genre, the one I just dropped in host chat for you, Trish, you should play it. It's by Timmy, the artist for Undertale that's not Toby Fox. And
I recognized immediately, and I'm like, oh shit.
yeah, it's fantastic. And me and Maddie covered it on we randomly picked 3 RPG Maker games from Itch.io. We sorted by RPG Maker and did the top 3 to have for a bonus episode. And I still think about Escaped Chasm ever since. So
I am gonna have to play this.
I was wondering if you were ever going to say the title of the game.
Oh, I guess I had it until now. Maybe I was burying the lead for the drama and not just I forgot.
Yeah, I have to play that.
Yeah, it will take you about 30 minutes to get all the endings. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah, it is very micro.
So very. I mean, this is less RPG and more. This is Ren P instead of RPG Maker, but very like One Night Hot Spring. Then
I'm sure.
Okay, then I'm gonna take a note about the fact you've not played One Night Hot Spring. Anyway. Speaking weirdly, actually, of One Night Hot Spring having something in common with this game, I really enjoy. So if you go in the menu and you go to the party screen, you can click on any of your party members and get kind of like a detailed not detailed, like little bio about them, which is just fun. I enjoyed it. You get some like detailed art of them. But my favorite part of that is it mentioning each character's gender and sexuality, like mentioning if they're trans or cis. And I specifically have to be so happy about that in the sense that, like, it's not just it just tells you if they're trans, but the cis characters also have cis on there, which it feels weird for me to call that as like, oh yay, I'm glad that's a thing that's in there. But a lot of things wouldn't do that because if you're not trans, it's just assumed you're cis. Cis is the default. And so actually clarifying which characters are cisgender, I think is really important and good. And I wish more things would do that. I know that there's a whole conversation in the queer community about what is better in queer representation media, if it is better to have characters where like their labels and how they identify are up and center and very visible, or stuff where it's just a part of their character that isn't talked about or dealt with. I definitely lean more towards the former than the latter. I think that we should have both. There should be room for both. But yeah, I really enjoy the way this game handles its queer representation, namely by it being fucking everywhere.
Yeah. I just realized this is the first non-trans rage trans representation on RPG Book Club.
That makes me a little sad, but also I'm glad it's this game because God, there's so much good trans rep in this game.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how you read Sailor Uranus, we did play a Sailor Moon game, so
that's fun.
Yeah, so depending on your read of that whole situation,
I know
maybe not, but
I know next to nothing about the Sailor Moon franchise, so I can't comment one way or the other.
Yeah, Sailor Uranus dresses as a boy, presents as a boy, but is still a girl at the end of the day. But it came out like turn of the 90s, and a lot of times those like, oh, we're going to do a trans story, but like psych out at the last second so that it can get made. And who can say?
True.
But
true.
I mean, Naoko Takeuchi could probably say, and she hasn't, but she probably likes making a shitload of money, so probably won't come out one other way.
So we've talked about the soundtrack, which is gorgeous. I love it to death. And we talked about the writing, which is great. And I'm going to talk about the writing more in a sec. But I love the character designs in this game. The character designs are just so good. And I love just going around town talking to people. There's Bartholomew, the retired Dark Lord, who I vaguely alluded to in the recap, but I adore this grumpy old cat man who's walking around. It's like, oh yeah, he once tried to take over the world, but he's retired now. And he's going to become slightly important soon because his daughter, as you can find if you go into their house, his daughter is selling a bunch of his old spell books. which is a whole mechanic we're going to get to do, which I'm so excited for your thoughts on that. But also in that house is his granddaughter, Pepper, who is like, I don't know, like 6, 7 years old and is 100% ready to follow in her grandfather's footsteps by becoming an evil overlord herself, which I love it. It's so goofy. There's also, when you talk about you talked earlier about Lady Province, one of the paladins, who's the one in the lobby. There's also Holly, who is just huge as shit and really buff. I adore her. And if her sprite is so big, if you go up and talk to her from the side, your face is in her armpit. And if you talk to her from that direction, she's like, "Hey, you should talk to my face, not my armpit." Speaking of buff, there's also the receptionist at the Paladin Tower, who's just a receptionist, who is I think Chihuahua. I'm not great with dog breeds. Some kind of dog. But his name is Chet, and there's a cute conversation with him about like that thing of Melody being like, "Oh, I haven't seen you since high school. How are you doing?" And him being like, "I'm working right now. I don't want to catch up." And then with just like writing things and jokes, we've mentioned a bunch of the ones that really stuck out to me. But my favorite that didn't get mentioned is if you go to talk to Faith, who's out painting outside the Paladin Tower when you're first going around and exploring, she could bring up something about like, oh, you probably like, I can't remember the exact how it gets to it, but basically comes up the idea of like, oh, you've probably been thinking about Allison this whole time, and you have dialogue options. So you could just say, "Sorry, what was that? I was thinking about Allison." And that leads into her trying to get your attention as you keep continuing to choose daydream about Allison as the conversation just ends because you're just completely lost thinking about your girlfriend, which I think is both very funny and very adorable.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. I'm trying to decide what breed Chet is. Could be a Chihuahua. Chihuahuas can have that coloration. But I'm leaning Doberman.
You know what? That's probably it. I love that he's this super big buff dog boy with a tiny head, and he's just a secretary. He's not. That's all he does. That was basically all my memorable moments. Did either of you have anything else on that front?
So less of a memorable moment, but more of a weird, funny thing. So I don't know if you brought up Bobby Schroeder very much in the history.
A little bit,
but
I mentioned their Tumblr blog or her Tumblr blog.
Yeah. So I found out about Super Lesbian RPG, and I did not know it was going to be a hit because the only Tumblr that I follow for their content, and not just I follow other people who are in the tags of the things that I like, is Bobby Schroeder's Sonic Tumblr called thankskinpinders.tumblr.com, which is a reaction read through of all of Archie Sonic. So I heard about it as, oh, this is the game that my Sonic reader made a furry game. So that's obviously what it like. It's just a fun thing that's out there. And then I've heard so many good things about it from outside of it, and it was a very weird way to discover a game existed. And I felt like a cool kid for knowing about it. But I wanted to shout out Thanks Kinpinders because it's making these early issues of Archie Sonic much better to have someone quote unquote reading along with me and taking the piss out of all of the bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit.
I should really check out that comic at some point, or that Tumblr at some point, because I am not much of a Sonic fan. I do enjoy the current IDW Sonic run, but I've always been kind of like morbidly curious about those old Sonic comics, and so it feels like that Tumblr would be the perfect place to learn about that.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for the week. If you like what you heard, you can head on over to www.rpgbook.club, where you can donate to help us pay for hosting costs and game costs and various subscription costs. And in return, you can join one of 3 tiers. The Gadabout tier is for everyone who pays $1 or more a month. This gets you access to our Book Club no Kiseki and Tales of Podcastia episodes a month before everyone else. And it lets you vote on our polls whenever they go live. Then we have the Warrior tier, which is for everyone who pays $5 or more a month. And they also get their name shouted out at the end of every episode, just like this. Shoutouts to Frost Terror, Dragon Slayer 19, Cerebral Wind, Floris, Kaldron, Freddy Rodriguez, AA Ron 524, Jfro Prime, and Doho. And then finally, we have the Luminary tier for everyone who loves us so much they pay us $20 or more a month, where they also get a one-sentence shout-out to make me say whatever they want. Shoutouts to El Tantavi, who wants you to check out critical-distance.com, an aggregator for games criticism and journalism. Shoutouts to William Taylor, who wants you to check out rpgamer.com, a game review website by people like us, for people like us. Shout out to Vimk, who says to play The Legend of Legaia. It's that PS1 RPG everyone confuses with Legend of Dragoon. And also shout outs to Carr, who's a dentist, so he's not shouting out a URL, but rather your own mouth. And he says to brush your teeth twice a day, most importantly, the time right before you go to bed. For RPG Book Club, I have been Sam Allman.
Bernard, I've been low energy because I'm tired and I was yawning right as you got to me.
And I'm Trish.
Toodaloo, folks.
Bye.